It's like a magic. Excuse me. 7:09. Everything's fine. How's everybody doing? Hey, we are live, obviously, and tonight we want to talk about turbos. More specifically, if you take a look at the thumbnail that I have up, that is Jimmy's S2000, and I think right now it has the G35 turbo on there, but we're going to run a bunch of different ones. We'll run all of our turbos. We'll run the GTX 3584 RS, we'll run that G35, and then also a G42 1200. We also will have others because we're going to do twins. We're going to do the smaller 3076s. We'll probably have some of the G42 1450s, I think. Probably have a couple of those just because sometimes maybe people want to step up their game. They could do that as well. We'll have a couple of different ones. I don't want to have a ton of different turbos, and you know, we're going to have some because we're going to have different ARs and stuff to be able to do that. But I just don't want, you know, I don't want RHP to be a place that people go to find, you know, minuscule little changes between all of these turbos. The difference between the GTX 3584 RS that we have and the G35 turbo, the one that we're showing in Jimmy's S2000, is about 100 horsepower. Pretty good amount, more than 10% change, let's say, in power. The G35 is different in a couple of ways. One, as I said, it can make more power than the GTX 3584. So it's positioned in between we call it an 800 horsepower turbo, and a 900 and then 1,000 plus kind of thing for the larger G42 on the V8 stuff. And the reason for that is these turbos are actually rated at like 950 for the 3584, 1050 for the G35, and then 1,200 for the G42 that we have. There were a few differences here. One is that power rating really is on an optimized application. That's the way that everybody does everything. Oh, well, you know, you can make this amount of power. We know that the 3584 will do 800 plus because we know we've done that. We've run it at that power level on a 5.3. On a 4.8 probably would be better. And as you go down in displacement and up in motor efficiency, a la Honda F series, K series, B series, whatever, a 2J and RB, that's where you'll really see the most out of these turbos. The problem is that, you know, we know from past discussions, a turbo is hot side flow and cold side flow. You got to have both of them. If you lack one of those, then you're going to get to the flow limit of that side before you get to the flow limit of the other side. And usually you'll get to the flow limit of the hot side before you get to the flow limit of the cold side, because not very often do guys combine a really big cold side or a really big hot side and then a small cold side. I don't know. That might be on large displacement diesel applications or something where they're not looking for really high horsepower. That might be something. But normally it's the other way. So, and that's why they do so well on a high, you know, a high specific output 2-liter where you're running. And the other thing is that these compressor housings are designed, the wheels, and to some extent the housing, but more so the wheel is designed for very high pressure ratios also. So it doesn't want to be as good at making 800 horsepower at 15 pounds as it does making 800 horsepower at 20 or 30 pounds, which it would have to do on a 2-liter or maybe a 3-liter or somewhere in between there. We want to have, obviously, turbos, and the reason that we're doing this is because we're not just selling turbos for LS applications. The turbos fit anything. They fit Coyotes, they fit 5-liter Fords, you know, Dodge Magnums or Hemis, all of the import stuff, the Sprint turbo, all the Honda stuff, Toyota stuff, anything. The turbo doesn't care. As long as you size the turbo for the power level that you're looking at, and then also for the next thing you choose is the response rate for both of those things. You choose a turbo, size it for that, and you get some sort of combination of those things. So obviously, if we're looking at the GTX 3584 RS on a 4.8 or a 5.3, going to be a lot more responsive than it is on a 2-liter K series or a J series V6 or this F series, or a 2J or an RB or whatever. It's going to be a lot more responsive because the displacement and the power output of the naturally aspirated motor, it makes a lot more power down low. Essentially, it makes a lot more low speed power, a lot more exhaust energy, spools the turbo up quicker. We know that from bigger motors do that, and that's what happens. The downside of that is limitation on peak power because of, we get into back pressure issues. So that's all normal stuff. That happens with all turbos, happens with all combinations. That's the way that it is. But with Jimmy's motor, it's a stroker version, I think, of an F series. I can't remember if it's 2.3 or 2.4 liters. It's a Brian Crower stroker deal, and it's got a lot of forged internals. It's got a lot of good stuff in it. So it can be tested at some fairly high boost and power level. So it'd be cool. So what we'll do is when that thing gets running, and it should be, the motor's in, I think all the stuff is there. And as soon as it gets running and broken in, then we'll start doing regimented testing with it. So we'll test all the turbos and kind of see where we are. We want to test, this would be a good thing to display, not just power, which we want to do, but also response rates on some of these smaller motors. Because like I said, the turbos, we want to sell turbos to Honda guys and to Dodge guys, to Neon guys, to everybody. As long as it's the right turbo for that application. And the way that we find that out is we do testing out. So we're going to do some testing on that. Hopefully we'll be able to push these turbos up fairly high, make good power. That's enough motor to do it. It's a manual trans car. It's got a good clutch in it. It's got all the stuff in it. So he'll be able to do that. We'll also be able to do that with the NSX. So we'll have a 2.4 liter and then a 3.5 liter in the V6 that's in the NSX, and then lots of LS applications, and then other things we'll test on the engine dyno as well. So that will be kind of cool. But on the G35, that should also be a popular turbo. We haven't promoted it at all. We have tested it quite a bit, but we haven't promoted it at all. And one of the reasons is that the 800 and the 1200 horsepower turbo are journal bearing turbos. And so they're fairly inexpensive. The dual ball bearing G35, worth more than 1,000 horsepower, or capable of going more than 1,000 horsepower on the right combination, would also be a really good choice for a guy wanting good response, but wanting more than the GTX 3584 is capable of. It's a good turbo, dual ball bearing, should last longer, all of that stuff. It's not going to be for guys looking, don't look for more response rate from that. A G35 is probably not going to be as responsive as our 3584, but the gain is that you get more power. Just like we saw when we did the AR change on the 3584, that's the trade-off. You get a little bit less response and a little bit more power. The G35, you're going to be able to have, you'll have more power potential. So it's a good combination. I'll be interested to see how many people choose that. Like I said, good turbo, and we'll see. We'll see if people want that intermediate area between the two that we're currently selling, to see if people want that. Obviously, with two of those, you want to make 2,000 horsepower. And it's funny. I was going over this with somebody on the Big Bang stuff. So we're talking about. They said, okay, on the Big Bang stuff, would you do it differently now? I said, well, I may not do it differently now. I would definitely do the earlier ones differently. I would do the 4.8 and the 5.3 differently, in that I would choose different turbos for that. The S475s that I ran were fine and worked very well for what we were trying to accomplish. But what I would change, and this is what I talked to a lot of people about back when that thing was going crazy with all the social media exposure, is that people were asking, well, can I put this in a car? Yeah, you can, but it'd be a terrible combination because it was purposely designed not to be very responsive, so that we would make power, not make a big torque number, so that we'd make just a big horsepower number, particularly with the 4.8 and 5.3. We had those 76 millimeter CX Racing turbos, which were smaller, So if I was, and my point of all this is the thing that I would have changed was not so much the stuff. I would have changed the earlier turbos to those 78, or to the S475s, or these G42s would be as good or better than that for something like this, because we're not looking for response. So 2 of those would be good. I would use our turbos and we would do it that way. But for actually using these things on the street, like for using the twin turbo big bang-ish 4.8 or 5.3 or 6.0, I'd pick different turbos, because you're not going to go to 2000 horsepower. And there's no reason to leave the other 500 horsepower where I got paint because I was painting today. You can kind of see. There's no reason to have that extra 500 horsepower worth of turbos there, which just means less response. So if I was telling somebody what to do, or they were asking for my advice on it, I'd tell them, yeah, pick smaller turbos. I mean, twin 3584s that we sell would be way better than the twin S475s, particularly if a guy for some reason picked T6 S475s. That would be an awful combination for twins, unless you had a 540 inch or some kind of big block thing. And even then, I think I would go with T4s. And I don't know that I'd pick those turbos. I'd pick G42s. But I would pick smaller turbos. And then, you would pick the turbos based on your power output. Do you want to make 1500? Then twin 3584s would be fine. You want to make less than that? Then go smaller than that. If we could get to 2000 horsepower and have a lot more response rate with the twin G35s. Way better than the S475s in terms of response rate. I'm certain of it. And you could still get to that level if you wanted to go to that level with a 6-liter and turn the boost up and that stuff. You could get to that. So there would be much better choices, not necessarily for the testing that I did, but for actually taking those and putting them in cars and going no prep racing or whatever you're doing, or cars and coffee and just burnouts or whatever you're trying to do. There would be much better combinations. The CX Racing turbos that I did got the job done for those first things. Those wouldn't be what I would pick now. We've learned a lot about turbos. And not just that, we have other turbos now. Those were the turbos that I had because they supplied them. They said, yeah, we'll let you use our turbos here. We'll give you these $200 turbos or whatever they are, and then we'll get promotion out of it. I said, okay. I said, but whatever happens with them. Like if they break, I'm going to tell people that they broke. Turns out that they didn't, that they worked just fine. And they were enough. But I used, like in those early ones, I used JBA shorty headers flipped over. I wouldn't do that again. The elbows, they were just quickie fabricated elbows. They weren't even the same size on each side. One was 2.5, one's 3 inch. I wouldn't do any of that on the other big bang stuff. If I redid a 4.8 or a 5.3 or something like that, I wouldn't do that. I would do it correctly so that it, so that at least it looked better, and we use different turbos and stuff on it. But for the street, definitely would use that. But go, you guys, if the guys are interested, go check out the G35s. Those are in stock. And I think that we have to ask Jimmy, but we're getting some mirror image stuff in too, which will be awesome. We'll see what you guys got going on. Here's our poll. Okay, would twin G35 turbos make as much power as twin S475 turbos? S475s are bigger. I mean, rated bigger. So let me know. Made it crashes here. Users here. Riker, what's going on? What size turbo would be good for an LQ4799 hit? Got to tell me what kind of power level you're trying to make, because that 6-liter with those heads, and I'm assuming some kind of mild cam, could make, like, let's say it makes 400 or 450 NA. It could make anywhere from there to 2000 or 2500 or whatever, depending on what you did to it, depending on the turbos that you would pick. So just tell me how much power you want to make. What size should I look at for a 300 plus horsepower 302? What, you got to tell me what kind of power you want to make. I'm sure that you don't want to make 300 horsepower from a 302. I'm sure you already have a 300 horsepower 302. So you got to tell me how much power you want to make. and then we can talk about turbo sizing, because that's what it is. The turbo size, the turbo that you would use is a function of the power level that you want to make. Then we could talk about the other things after that. Do the 5.3 aluminum LC9 motors spin cam bearings have oil problems? I'm not aware of that. If somebody else is, please chime in there. 7875 is also awesome. I think some of the aluminum motors had problems, not with bearings, but oiling problems from the pans that they used. Gen 453, 4L80, 3000 stall, 454 cam, 1200cc injectors, Hellcat pumps, G35 turbo, and a 2012 Tahoe. How much power will this combination make? It will make as much as that G35 turbo will support. I'm thinking it doesn't get to... so on the 3584, a guy has made 730 at the tire. I don't know about your tire size and all that, but the G35 is rated at over 1,000 horsepower. You won't get that with an LS. So I don't know. Let's say that it does somewhere in the 800 to 900 range at the tire. I've been looking at the G35 turbo. My question is, if you're going to shoot for 900 to 1,000 on a built 6-liter G42 or G35, also knowing room is premium. Well, if you can't fit it, then you can only use the smaller turbo. In that instance, especially if you're talking about 950 to 1,000 at the tire, even if it's 1,000 at the flywheel, you're going to the limit of the G35. So I definitely would pick G42 on that combination. And I especially would do it if, it is a 6-liter. So I'd pick a G42, because you're going to have really, really good response with that, because we have run the G42 even on a 5.3 and it's fine. Getaway, what's going on? Trying to run offset keepers on VTEC heads and the self-centering roller rockers have basically no clearance on the side. That's one of the problems when you shim the retainer up relative to the valve tip. And I went through that on big block Chevys also. We were trying to do beehive springs and then adjust it with keepers. They're just, then the rocker tip doesn't work. And so I understand your problem. You just can't do it. Would it be okay to take a few thousands off the top of the keepers? Clearance on the sides. Are you having a problem? I don't see where the problem would be the keeper. It's normally the retainer, right? Would you recommend for a 400 small block to get the max power out of it without destroying the block? I don't know what you mean by max power. Are you wanting to build a 10,000 horsepower like top fuel motor out of it? What are you trying to do? There's got to be some sort of realistic number that you're looking at. Reasonably, I'd like 500 horsepower. It's mildly built, stroke 302 with cam and heads. Yeah, our GTX 3584 is probably fine for that. The G42 or the G35 would also be really good for that. That's enough displacement where you would be able to spool that turbo up without any problem. But the 3584 would definitely work. 4.7 V8 looking for 500 watt size turbo would be looking for. NA is about 310. If you're looking for 500, then a 3584 turbo or this G35 turbo, either one of those will do that. And then they'll both have room to grow quite a bit from there, from the 500 horsepower range. Interesting, our poll is 50-50 would twin G35 turbos make as much as twin S475 turbos. I think they do. I think that the 50% is thinking that that's not true. I think that they're concerned with back pressure issues, like on the hot side of that, because the cold side definitely will support that. I think that, and I have not seen this unless you go really, really small on turbos, is I have not seen back pressure issues on twin setups. Very rarely do we see that. Like when we ran twins on the Big Bang motors with the S475s, they were both T4s. We ran twins on those. We have less back pressure than boost pressure, which is expected. looking to get 500 horsepower of a 400 small block, or parts you recommend? So that's 1 horsepower, that's 1.3 or so horsepower per cubic inch. That's not going to be that hard. I probably would do a flat top or a slight dish piston. I would do an AFR enforcer, should get you to 500, or one of the ported heads. You could go with skip white or something else. You're going to need a cam that's like 230, 236 probably to get to 500. Probably can get there with a dual plane intake manifold, an RPM air gap, or that style, and then also have a 1/2 inch open spacer in your pocket. You're going to need a 750 or 850 carburetor for that, long tube headers. And I'm sure you'll put roller rockers on it. Looking to build a Gen 353 for my daily-ish truck. Looking for 500, 700 wheel horsepower on 93 pump gas with low buck truck and a G42 achieve my goals. 1000cc injectors and one of the Hellcat pumps. Yeah, the Hellcat pump is going to, it's 700 wheel. Well, 700 wheel horsepower on 93 is probably going to be fine for the pump, because the pump is the limiting thing. The injectors, you could definitely get there without any problem. The G42 also will support that. Whether or not you can get there on 93 is a tuning thing, but all the other things will allow you to get there. Max power for a single Hellcat pump and factory pump basket with 8 AN feed and 6 AN 1 Elm factory turn regulars currently on newer flex 50-pound injectors, billet journal. Well, the Wacko, the pump will support more than those 50-pound injectors will. So you don't have to worry about that. Less back pressure is the reason why I want twins on my Avalanche. Does less back pressure equal less stress, more reliability from the package? No. If you look at factory turbos, so something that the factory put on some application that's a factory turbo combination, the back pressure is very high. It's at least 2 to 1 and probably higher than that. So the OEMs do that, and they don't do it because of what you're talking about. They don't do it for reliability or pressure or stress or whatever. They do it because they want response rate. And that's the big thing that you should be thinking about. Back pressure is what's going to be there. And also you could argue what causes better boost response. So if you have a turbo combination like our Bonneville car, like our Bonneville Civic that we ran, that had less back pressure than boost pressure, but it had terrible boost response. Wasn't a problem for what we were doing because we didn't care about boost response at Bonneville. We just cared about once we could go to wide open throttle, which only happened in 5th gear, and we were already at above VTEC level. So we were already at 5,500 RPM or so, where the motor was happy. It had plenty of boost. We didn't have to worry about boost response. In fact, we didn't want boost response in any of the lower gears because we didn't have traction for it. So it wasn't an issue. On the street, you do want that. So you'll balance back pressure and boost pressure mostly for boost response and not for stress levels. For a 4.7 or grenade itself, if I try to push it more than that, if you put ring gap in a motor and put head studs on it, you should be able to go pretty far. Duty cycle's already getting up there. That doesn't surprise me. 50-pounders are good for 800 NA, but way less under boost. So, and then way less if you're doing E85 in boost. What's the most power you could run reliably in a boosted aluminum LC7 in a no prep car? If you talk to Capizzi, that they run, I don't know if he runs an LC9. I don't know which aluminum motor he's using, but you can see what he's doing. And so that's what's possible. So forget about the power number. I'm sure he doesn't talk about whatever the power number is, but look what he's running. And he's really good at what he does. Scrolling. I see you're sure you're not a scientist. No, I'm not. Back pressure versus response is why people get VGT. Yeah, VGT problem with those is that they stop working because it's a really harsh environment and the blades get sticky. Okay, Ralph, we're gonna you're gone. I can't have you doing this. I don't know what your deal is. Oh, on diesel stuff. Yeah, but even then, the VGT stuff I like. I like the idea of it. I like the movable vanes and all that's kind of cool. But they just don't seem to last very long. What about the sizing of the downpipe? Some cars don't have the size for a 3 or 3.5 downpipe. That will be the smallest downpipe for a GT35-84 RS. If you can't put a 3-inch downpipe in it, you need to do something else because you have to have at least that. We like a 3.5 inch for the 35-84 RS. You could get away with a 3 and it will still work. We've run it a lot with that. Has a mechanic made plenty of money for VGT issues? Yeah, and the actuator and stuff still works, but where the blades rotate, if they get buildup on the surface, it just it's just stopping it. It's like, hey, look, I got something in the way. I can't articulate anymore. I had to decarbon the VGT mechanisms in my Jetta. Oven cleaner for the win. Oven cleaner works really, really good for that. 3-inch minimum. Yeah, the outlet of a GTX 3584 RS, the V band, it's sized for a 3-inch pipe. Water or meth injection works great on VGT stuff. Yeah, that's another good thing. It also works well on piston tops and combustion chambers. It cleans the stuff up pretty well. Works good. Works good to clean the backs of valves too on direct injected stuff. Anything that gets the stuff washed off so that the buildup doesn't happen in the first place, it's better to do that than it is to try to clean it off. I mean, you could, they used to walnut shell I think the BMWs were kind of famous for that, walnut shelling all of that stuff. But it's better to not have it build up. Oven cleaner is kind of caustic. It is, but you just don't leave it on there for a long time. You just use it properly and it works fine. A 2.5-inch downpipe you could do, but snake it past something and then make it bigger. That might help. If you get pumping losses with manifold vacuum, are there pumping gains under boost? There are pumping gains at 0 vacuum, but the problem with having boost is when you have boost, you also have to augment that, usually both with more fuel and less timing, which are both bad for fuel mileage, if that's what you're trying to do. Just been playing with an Aquamist kit and a customer's WRX. I haven't heard that name in a long time. We have used those before though. And ERL, snow performance, obviously. Spear Cove, like goes way back. I have 3000s offset keeper, so the keeper sticks up past the retainer and has enough clearance on the exhaust, just the intake is barely touching on them. So is the keeper above the valve tip? And am I thinking, are these guided rockers or something? Do they have the little slats on the side of them? Does it miss the intercooler? Misting the intercooler with water is a good idea for recovery rate. Definitely helps with that. Have a snow performance kit tucked away for the next diesel project. Yeah, that's nice. With the snow stuff for diesel, if you put any kind of fuel in there, like you use methanol or the boost juice or whatever, it adds power because the diesel is throttled by fuel. So if you add something else in there that's a fuel, it works good. Get nitrous or methanol or any of that stuff. seen people set up windshield washers for the intercoolers. Yeah, we used to do all that stuff back in the day. Does a flywheel need dowel pins to what? Secure the pressure plate? For the pressure plate, yes. It doesn't need dowel pins for a to attach itself to the crank. A lot of flywheels don't have that. They're it's like an interference fit, like a not quite a press fit, but a zero press fit on the crankshaft, and then the bolts secure it in place. Intercooler missing is another Subaru thing, and not just Subaru. I would argue any of the top mounted intercoolers, like the old T-Bird turbos and the SVO turbos and stuff, that kind of thing. Diesels love methanol. Yeah, anything. All right, Riker man, we'll see you later. I think Scubaroos came OEM with misters. I think that did the STIs come with that? I'm thinking that somebody did. Saab had water injection on their deals. I remember reading about that, and they were. I read a lot of the James Bond books, and in one of the James Bond books, he had a Saab turbo, and he was racing against a GT35-THE at some, the rich supervillains track, and he was racing his Saab turbo against the guys, the rich supervillains driver, his professional driver in this GT35-THE. And they were talking about that the water methanol injection or whatever was augmenting the power and stuff. I'm like, yes, not a lot. You bet was an option on the Subaru. Yeah, certain packages just came with them. Yeah, that's what I thought. I thought I remember the whoop-de-doo STI thing or JDM applications. Yeah, it can be good. It's definitely better than not having it. And I did some tests with cooling them with nitrous. They had the nitrous ring on there from the guys at Nitrous Express, and we tested that. It works. It definitely cools stuff off, but it's a lot better just to direct the nitrous into the motor rather than try to cool the intercooler. But that's all part of the deal. One of the other things I wanted to point out is on the photo. If you look at the thumbnail photo, go back and look at it, because Jimmy sent me some more photos. In fact, he sent me a video of this. He was very excited, and rightfully so. If you look at the turbo and you look, it has a 4-inch tube, a cold air intake going over into the fender well. Good idea. Excellent idea. Big thumbs up for Jimmy doing cold air going to the turbo, especially where the turbo is positioned, which is it's a little bit high, but right where there's going to be radiator like fan wash going into the turbo, which is not good. So cold air going to the turbo, just like we did on our kit for the Tahoe. Very, very cool. So getting cold air at the turbo, 2 thumbs up for that. Got a sneaking suspicion. Have a bad head gasket on my truck. Popped the heater core a month ago. Placed it last night. It was half-gallon low. No heat on my way home. Bummer on the no heat thing, because we are in boost weather now, obviously. Subarus are 80% North American sales. That's actually a rare brand in Asia. We have more Mitsubishi. So Evos are more popular than. I kind of like the Evo better. I like the motor better. I think a lot of the Subarus, like back when Colin McRae was driving stuff, they look really cool. But a flat 4-cylinder, I don't know. I mean, they're cool. And my buddy Gary drove one and won a championship in it. So that's awesome. And I got to drive it. It was a lot of fun to drive. I got to drive it on the track, which was awesome. But I still, more Evo for me. Yep, it is boost weather. That's hoodie weather is boost weather. That's what I posted on social media. Supposed to snow Saturday, and they're already salting the bridges. Really just like riding a 614 in the snow. Yeah, that's probably be fairly exciting. We're going to get rain tomorrow, and we just got our roof done, the back roof, which is good. They got that done in time. And then after that, though, it's going to be, mid 70s, which will be nice. Evos are everywhere. Tons of Lancers. Okay. My NA4B11 has 270,000 on it. Still going. Strong clutch on the works. Is it an NA one, or what is that? What's a 4B11? Oh, your NA one. Okay, that's what I was. I don't know why I was asking the question. It's right there. Just read the comment, Richard. Yeah, that's how that happens. I still want to see somebody put a GTX 3584 RS or the G35 on a 4.8. Turbo on the Evo's backed by the firewall, kind of lame to work on. Yeah, my Omni is like that too. NA Evo motor, okay. Yeah, it's nice that's one thing about the Honda stuff is that the turbo stuff is right there, and the intake manifold's on the back. But we can take all that off though. It's actually fairly nice to work on, at least B series stuff. Toyota Starlet, my new obsession. I really like those things. I think that those are awesome too. I do like Starlets. Evo engine, Subaru all-wheel drive, but properly weighted and balanced. I'm not riding mine in the rain, the snow. No, I wouldn't do that. I have ridden motorcycles in the rain. In fact, I drove home. When I had the GSXR 750, I rode home from Southern California, which was fairly, or at least reasonably nice when I left, and then rode to Northern California, and it started raining about halfway. And this is December because I rode home for Christmas. And needless to say, the bike just got parked when I got there, and I was freezing when I got there. But that's a long ride on that bike, 450 miles, leaning over like that. It's not cool. After I did it, and then riding back, my girlfriend came up to see me at the time and rode back with me. So after we did that, we'd stop at the gas stations and we would turn the little hand blowers on, just try to warm up, and then keep going. And after I did that, I'm like, yeah, check that off the list. Never doing that again. Florida, people break out the hoodies when the temp gets below 80. I want to go back to Florida. I want to go do some stuff with a Python Cowboy. I think that'll be fun. Longevity on the 3580 RS turbos, that's fantastic. If they break, it's within a week. If they last us 24 months. We don't have any problems with ours. That might be the way it is for like eBay stuff, but that's not what we have. One thing that I do on any turbo that I buy is I put oil in it and spin the impeller and the shaft by hand and make sure that everything is oiled before I put it on there and start it up. I've seen guys just put them on there and start them up and they're dry. And I'm like, why would you do that? Give it something. Give it a little bit of love. My 2024 ZX14 has heated grips and seats, snowmobile gloves and insulated bibs. It's not horrible, but the TC and ABS can only do so much with sport tires, 35 miles each way. Yeah, and when it's wet out, crosswalks can get diabolical and stuff. It's just, I ride my Honda in the rain. The X14 is a different animal. Max speed and rod stuff is decent. The valve stem sticks up past the keepers. Just not quite enough on some of them. And the rockers do have the little discs that stick down on the sides. Okay, so it's a guided rocker. Yeah, that's where the issue is. Yeah, that is a problem. That can also be solved with guide plates and unguided rockers. The experiment with a single bank only turbo was very interesting. Yeah, that was cool. I liked doing that. I'm glad that we got it to work. And because I tried that on a big block before, and I think that the exhaust and the turbo sizing, the header that we were using, the turbo sizing, were not conducive to that. Running it with the Fowler deal, the log style manifold, it helped quite a bit. We pre-oil them. We love the max speeding rod stuff. They're a great supporter. That's cool. What happened to the twin M90? I don't know about that. Mine is an 08 ZX14, a first year of the Hayabusa killer. I have no safety features, just raw power. I don't ride my turbo Busa in the rain or cold. Need to get my 80 Suzuki running better and ride that. All heated but no fairing. I've never heard of, and obviously I've been out of bikes for a long time, but I've never heard of heated seats or heated grips or anything. I've never seen that. I don't. Would do heated grips do anything when you have gloves on? I mean, you'd be wearing gloves on if you're riding, as if you're riding when it's cold anyway. Back when I was riding the GSXR, they had just implemented the helmet law. So before that, most of the time we were riding with no helmets, not on the freeway and stuff. But if we were cruising down, like, because we lived down in Newport Beach, we were cruising down Balboa and stuff, there was no helmets. The diesel guys go for the Flex brand turbos. They have good luck with those. Do you mean the high digit stuff, the expensive stuff? That's all fine. People, we have, Jimmy has import guys around him that are like that. I only put Garrett on, or I only put whatever, maybe Precision has high dollar stuff too. That's fine. I tell people, use what you want. But I also tell them, but test stuff. If you don't know, like in a lot of cases, people will make comments about things having never tested it. Oh, I only use this. Okay, that's great. And that's okay. But don't do it because you've never tried anything else. That's not just like saying, I hate filet mignon or bacon wrapped fillets. Well, if you've not tried it, you got to kind of try it. Heated grips are the bomb. They extend your riding season a bunch. Do your hands get cold? Definitely help even at 60 degrees, 5 heat level. Some heats have 2 heat levels. Makes you feel fairly bougie. Yeah. I can say though that my roommate at the time, his mom bought him a riding suit. So a like nylon, keep all the wind out kind of riding suit. And it was a little too big for me, but I did wear it a few times. I'm like, oh, this thing is fantastic. There is no cold coming into this thing. This is awesome. Are there any tuning headaches or bank-to-bank feeling differences with a single bank turbo? I don't know. We didn't even look at that. But the whole motor is turbocharged. So I don't think that that's an issue. Heated grips are common. When they're set too high, you need gloves to keep a hold of them. They get that hot. Your hands get cold. Holding on to a hot potato. Yeah, I didn't. That's why I come here, man. I learn stuff all the way. That never dawned on me that was a thing. I wouldn't have thought about that. I guess maybe like a gold wing or something like that, because it's like you're driving an apartment building, and so they have stereos blaring and all that stuff. So I guess I could see where that would be a thing, but I didn't know sport bikes had that. Have you ever done anything with Apex nutless turbos? They claim to make a lot more power than other turbos because you don't have a nut on the inlet. How are they securing the shaft on the? Are they just friction welding the impeller to the shaft? Is that what they're doing? And that would help, but it would help at the highest level of stuff when you're trying to maximize the flow rate of something. Just like when you get a radius entry on a turbo. If you're running a 1,000 horsepower turbo and you're running it at 500 horsepower, a radius entry isn't really not going to do very much. But if you're trying to get to 1,000 or 1,050, then things like the radius entry or an improvement in the airflow of the impeller, a la The nutless turbo. That's good. My back locks up way before my hands get cold. Love the dorky windshield. Even those big motorcycles have all the heated features. The old commercial for them was funny. Leaning on the track on a giant cruiser. Snowmobiles and quads, you can get heated grip mitts. Nice. Heated grips are easily installed aftermarket. Factory heat is usually an add-on touring and cruiser bikes. I thought maybe you just take the those heating pads or whatever and just stick them in your gloves like we used to do for skiing and stuff. The inlet and the shaft are one piece, and the exhaust turbine bolts onto it. Okay, so on the exit side, okay. So is the shaft and the impeller, are they one piece? Or like I said, is it friction welded? I mean, it'd make more sense if it was friction welded, but if you haven't rode a Goldwing, you'd be surprised how fairly nimble and pretty quick. Oh, I don't doubt it. A Goldwing is probably too big of a bike for me, but they are they're big, and so they got to have power, right? They got to have torque. I like to see videos of guys peg scraping bikes like that. I believe they're one-piece billet. Okay. What's your favorite engine from the 60s? I don't really have one. My favorite engine is always whatever the next cool thing that I'm working on is. I ran a bunch of the muscle car era small blocks, and that was cool. I like doing that. I wanted to do big blocks, but it was really, really expensive to try to do that. There are some cool one-off things that I would like to see. Some of the Reynolds aluminum Can-Am motors, the 91730 twin turbo Porsche motor for Can-Am. Some of the experimental Shadow and stuff where they tried twin turbo Buicks or big blocks or whatever. Some of those would be cool. And the Hemi headed small blocks, some of the stuff that Smokey and Shelby and all of those guys did that we don't hear a lot about because it might have been a one-off thing. Goldwing anymore is an 1800cc flat six is plenty to go. Yeah, I would think so. 327s are awesome. I did the both the L76, which is the 365 horse 327, and the fuel injected one, the L84, which is the 375 horse 327. We tested both of those reproductions of those. Do you have an opinion on Pulsar turbos or similar identical Garrett knockoffs? I think the Pulsar, I thought that the people from Pulsar used to work for Garrett. I don't know if that's true or not, but I thought that was the case. I think that the Pulsar ones are good, but how expensive are the Pulsar turbos? They're probably not Garrett money though, right? I enjoyed the videos that you made on the legendary muscle car stuff. Yeah, those were neat. It was cool to see what, I did it mostly because of the DZ302. Oh, this thing's made 450 horsepower. I'm like, how can that be with fuelie heads? They're not going to do that. Those heads are not good. I mean, they're, for a stock head for a small block Chevy, they're the head to get. But a lot has changed since then. I started at 709. She's fine. My 409. Yeah, 409s are good. Another motor that I would love to run, like a 409, the Z11 motor. I'd like to see somebody run the 425 horse 409. I'd like to see that. I'd like to see somebody run more of the cool like FE tri-power motors and all that stuff, like the Pontiac stuff. Multi-carb anything would be really, really cool because I like all that stuff. Because I'm digging it. I like it all. But I like all the modern stuff too. RBs and well, I guess an RBs, not modern. To me, it is. Looking into Summit 8803 cam for my VTEC 350 with a single plane. Have you run that cam for? I have not. I don't know what it is. So I may have run something similar, but I don't know what the specs are on that cam. Pontiac 400s, yeah, good. 389 tri-powers. I wish they would have done a 400 tri-power. Would have been cool. I'd like to just run. I want to run the tri-power versus the single 4-barrel on a Pontiac. I also want to do that on the Dodge. Dulcich and I talked about doing that on his 340. We want to run a factory tri-power setup with and compare it to a factory 4-barrel manifold and just see what they do. I mean, if you had your choice, you would take the tri-power. Even if the other one made more power, you'd take the tri-power because tri-power is worth more and it's cooler. So if you pull up at Cars and Coffee and you have a 346 pack, that's like way more cooler than just a 340 4-barrel, even if the 344 barrel would be less problematic and make more power or run through the quarter mile quicker. That wouldn't matter. It doesn't matter at Cars and Coffee. Goldwing motors way too much. All torque, but not much power. 600 to 10,000 cc sport bikes motors would be awesome. Got RPM for control, more horsepower than you need. Pro small block Chevy stage 4 hydraulic roller, 224, 232. 224, 232 is a good cam. That's a good cam for anything. For that lift range, if you have the VTEC heads, you're definitely going to have to fix the spring situation. There. Because VTEC heads do not like lift. Would twin G35 turbos make as much power as twin S475s? 53% are saying no. Give us the big turbos. Land our pull there. It gives us big, cantankerous S475s that have done so well for me. I still have 2 of those. And I have an T6 S475 from Summit. It's even polished. It's like turbo-y goodness, polished turbo-y goodness. I ran that turbo a lot. It's really the reason I think that I had to make the T6 to 3-inch V-band adapter. 570 available lift with your spring package. Then you're not going to want to go with a 1.6 rocker. If that's coil bind, you're going to want 20 or 30 before coil bind. You got to have 30 would be really good. That would give you really good spring control if you have that. But you don't want to run it at that. We're having manifolds made for our turbo kits. We're going to do fabricated ones. We're having castings done. That's why it's taking longer. But they'll be cool. They will be cool. Do we have any Gen 5 guys out there? Gen 5 LT guys? L83, L86, LT1, LT2, L87, L84. 5.3 versus 4.7. Interested to see the results for what? Using the 1.5, I plan on upgrading the heads eventually. Okay. A similar cam, my 302 is big, maybe not ideal for a street, but a 350 should take the specs nicely. That'll be fine. That's a cam I had in my 302 Ford. I had it was the crane version probably done by Elgin, I would imagine. It was a crane version of the 274 comp cam, and it was a 224, 232 on like a 112 or 113, and then a 540, 560 kind of lift. And I drove that around every day. And it was on a lower than stock compression 302. But it was fuel injected, had long runner manifolds on it and stuff with a VTEC on it. Worked good. Going to my 3rd gen, the 5-speed. Nice. Yeah, you won't have any problem at all with that cam in a 350. That will not be a problem at all. That will not be an issue. Pro small block Chevy stage 4 hydraulic roller. I can't believe that they're calling that a stage 4 cam. Stage 4 cam should be 240, not 220. That should be a stage 2. Wacko, what's 5.3 53 versus 47? I don't know what that is. Small block Chevy VTEC 350. Yeah, no, that's fine. That's a good cam for a 350. That's a good daily driver kind of camshaft for a 350. You could go with a 218, 224, and it'll drive a little bit better. But the poll results, okay. I think it's a stage 4 because it's about as big as it can fit in a stock bottom end. That might be it. They may be basing it on that. Maybe they started out with a stage 1 down at 200 or 202 or something. Some of the stock small block Chevy cams were not even 200 degrees of duration at 50. Some of them were. Some for the trucks were down at 180. They were really small. And no, those small cams don't make more torque. They might make more torque at 1500, but not more peak torque. Got 2 more minutes. Upper stage may be too much for stock springs. That cam's already too much for stock springs. You can't run stock springs on that cam. It's got way too much lift. Stock springs won't take that. You have to, I'm sure they have a spring package for that. I saw that, in fact, I talked to some messages to Brian over at Summit, and he's asking about doing some roller stuff, which is interesting. Solid roller stuff, which is kind of cool. I think it's limited market, but still. Stage 3 is similar to an LT4 hot cam. I'm thinking that a stage 4 would be a 218, 224. And then a 212, 218, and then a 206, 212 is typically what they do. People, for some reason, like that 8-degree split. And those steps, you go up 6 degrees of intake duration for each one. It's enough of a change where the cam is going to be different, and enough change in power, and then change in idle quality and all that stuff. Should pair well with stock motor, heads, cam, and intake. I think I'm going to do some more 8.1 testing. I may try to get with why can I never remember people's names? He has a Pro Charger kit for the 8.1, so we'll try to run that. I'm trying to look for his name. Can't remember. Amos Garcia, that's who it is. He's done a bunch of 8.1 stuff, so I'd like to do something with him. Trying to see a high compression 8.1. Yeah, I don't want to do that. We're not going to change the pistons. We did do a cam in it already, and it has his kind of ported intake manifold. And then we'll do some testing with it and probably put the Pro Charger on there, I think. I'd like to see him take that motor and put it in something. I think he went to duct tape drags. Hoping it's going to sound like a Motley Crue song and rev to 6500. If you have the right intake manifold on there, it'll rev to 6500. It's going to make peak power before that with a dual plane, certainly. How well does a sloppy stage 2 cam hold up? It depends on which one you get. There's lots of variations of the sloppy stage 2. The one from Elgin is good. The stuff that you can get on eBay or Amazon, there's no telling. There's actually no telling that you even get those cam specs. And also there's no telling on some of the metallurgy. So there's a number of problems or potential problems. The original one that Matt Happel was using, the one from Elgin, that works really good. I mean, in terms of longevity, there's nothing to worry about. It'll last longer than you have your motor, I'm sure. On that note, it is time to go. Thank you guys all for showing up. Good live feed, and I will see you guys all tomorrow.